These are the lessons from the Red Sea that are shaping China's strategy for a future war over Taiwan. For the past 15 months, U.S. Navy destroyers under Operation Prosperity Guardian have been locked in the most sustained naval combat since World War II, with Admiral Sam Paparo of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command watching Chinese military planners study every engagement as a live-fire laboratory for the drone swarms they're developing to overwhelm American defenses in the Pacific. Every Aegis combat system engagement at the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, every tactical decision and every economic calculation is being analyzed by the People's Liberation Army Navy as they prepare DF-21D and DF-26 anti-ship ballistic missiles for a Taiwan Strait conflict. The mathematics are stark and unsustainable. The Navy has burned through over $1 billion in interceptor missiles defending against attacks that cost the Houthis perhaps $20 million to execute. This isn't just poor economics, it's a preview of the strategic nightmare that awaits in any conflict over Taiwan, where the scale would be exponentially larger and the stakes infinitely higher. Let's start with what actually happened in the Red Sea, because the details reveal everything about the future of naval warfare. On October 19, 2023, the USS Carney found itself in a 10-hour running battle that would become legendary in naval circles. The ship's Aegis combat system watched radar screens fill with contacts, 15 drones, and 4 cruise missiles, all headed toward Israel. What followed was a masterclass in modern air defense, but also an ominous preview of warfare's new economics. Commander Jeremy Robertson had 30 seconds to decide whether to engage each incoming threat. "You're looking at something that's coming at you at Mach 5, Mach 6, he explained. The watchstanders have anywhere from 15 to 30 seconds to engage. There was no time for cost-benefit analysis in the traditional sense. With a $2 billion destroyer and over 300 lives at stake, Robertson fired everything necessary. No one from the Pentagon ever told him to conserve ammunition, but the numbers tell a different story about sustainability. Each SM-2 missile costs $2.1 million. The SM-6 interceptors run $4.3 million each. The newest SM-3s can cost up to $27.9 million per shot. Against these, the Houthis were launching drones that intelligence estimates suggest cost between $2,000 and $20,000 each. The most sophisticated Houthi cruise missiles might reach a few $100,000. The cost asymmetry was staggering, sometimes 15,000 to 1, in favor of the attackers. The Carney would go on to fight 51 separate engagements, successfully shooting down 45 out of 50 targets. By the time the ship returned home in May 2024, it had participated in the second most combat of any U.S. naval vessel since World War II. The crew received combat action ribbons, but the strategic implications were deeply troubling. As Brian Clark, a former Navy submariner now at the Hudson Institute, put it, "It's kind of amazing how the Navy has held up with no losses, but the cost has been pretty enormous." While American destroyers were burning through their missile magazines, Chinese ships were sailing through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait virtually untouched. Maritime tracking data revealed what Houthi officials had been saying openly: vessels marked Chinese vessel and crew received special treatment. Recent Treasury sanctions exposed the mechanism. Houthi leaders, including Mohammed Ali al-Houthi of the Supreme Political Council, coordinated directly with Chinese officials to guarantee safe passage for their ships. This arrangement gave China the best of both worlds. Beijing could continue importing 90% of Iran's oil, helping finance the very proxy forces attacking Western shipping, while its own vessels moved freely through what had become a war zone for everyone else. Every American missile fired in the Red Sea was a tax on U.S. naval presence that China didn't have to pay. But China's role went beyond passive free-riding. When interdiction forces stopped weapons shipments, they found Chinese fingerprints throughout Houthi arsenals. 800 drone propellers with Chinese identifiers were seized at the Omani border, the same model found in UAVs used by Houthis, Iranian-aligned militias in Iraq, and Russian-backed forces in Ukraine. The New York Times documented Chinese-origin hydrogen fuel cells in Houthi drones, technology that extended flight range and reduced radar detectability. What makes this even more damning, the U.S. sanctioned Changguang Satellite Technology Company in April 2025 for providing satellite imagery that enabled precise Houthi strikes on American naval assets. CGSTL wasn't some rogue operator. It was embedded within the Chinese Academy of Sciences and backed by Jilin's provincial government, exemplifying Beijing's military-civil fusion policy, where the lines between commercial and military technology deliberately blur. The strategic implications become clear when you examine what Chinese military analysts were writing about the Red Sea battles. The China Maritime Studies Institute published translations of articles from Navy Today, an official PLA Navy magazine, highlighting lessons and thoughts from the struggle for command of the sea in the Red Sea. People's Liberation Army Navy strategists weren't just observing, they were taking detailed notes on how small, cheap weapons could contest sea control against the world's most advanced navy. What they saw validated everything they'd been working toward. Since 2020, China Electronic Technology Group Corporation had been testing drone swarms, starting with 48 fixed-wing drones deployed simultaneously. By 2021, they announced tests of launchers capable of deploying 200 drones at once. In 2024, they unveiled the Zhu-Tian, an airborne mothership designed to deploy up to 100 kamikaze drones from a single platform. The Red Sea provided the perfect case study. If a few dozen Houthi attacks could force the US Navy to expend over $1 billion in interceptors, what would happen when China launched not dozens, but thousands of drones simultaneously? The scale difference is what keeps Pentagon planners awake at night. Consider Taiwan, where the Taiwan Strait is only 100 nautical miles wide compared to the vast expanses of the Red Sea. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense plans to produce 210,000 drones of various types over the coming years, but China's industrial capacity dwarfs this entirely. The People's Liberation Army Navy now possesses DF-21D and DF-26 anti-ship ballistic missiles specifically designed to target carrier groups approaching Taiwan, creating multi-layered threats that would overwhelm even the most advanced Aegis combat systems. While the US produces about 650 Patriot interceptors annually, China can mass-produce thousands of drones in the same time frame. Admiral Sam Paparo, commander of US Indo-Pacific Command, has spoken about turning the Taiwan Strait into a hellscape of defensive drones if China attempts an invasion. The concept envisions thousands of prepositioned air, sea, and ground drones operating in tandem to create an impenetrable defensive barrier. But the Red Sea experience reveals the flaw in this thinking. The defenders will run out of expensive interceptors long before the attackers run out of cheap platforms. The mathematics of modern air defense simply don't work at scale. When one US ally shot down a $200 drone with a Patriot missile costing over $3 million, it created a 15,000 to 1 cost disadvantage. Multiply that by thousands of simultaneous attacks, and even the largest defense budgets become inadequate. As Brian Clark noted grimly, "I think most estimates are within a few days of combat, if there was an invasion of Taiwan, that the US, the Navy in particular, would run out of weapons." This reality is driving both sides toward new solutions. The US Navy's Replicator initiative aims to deploy hundreds of small, unmanned surface vessels as part of a strategy to transform nearly half the surface fleet into robotic platforms by 2045. Rear Admiral Christopher Alexander reported that the Navy's inventory of small USVs surged from just 4 units in early 2025 to nearly 400 by year's end, with numbers expected to approach 500 by fiscal year 2026. But China isn't standing still. Chinese Navy researchers have revealed plans for multi-layered defense systems to protect warships from drone swarms. They've unveiled the Bullet Curtain system, the world's first close-in anti-drone barrage weapon that uses 35mm ammunition to create timed air bursts of sub-projectiles, forming dense walls of shrapnel designed to neutralize swarms. The Red Sea has also accelerated development of non-kinetic solutions that the Navy desperately needs. Electronic warfare systems that can jam drone communications, directed energy weapons that can engage multiple targets at the speed of light, and cyber capabilities that can turn enemy drones against each other. These systems promise to restore the economic balance. A laser shot costs about $1 per engagement compared to millions for a kinetic interceptor. Yet even here, the Red Sea experience offers sobering lessons. The Houthis have demonstrated remarkable adaptability, constantly evolving their tactics to counter American defensive measures. They've shifted from predictable flight patterns to erratic routing, employed decoy swarms to exhaust defensive systems, and used electronic warfare to disrupt American communications. If a relatively unsophisticated militia can adapt this quickly, what will happen when facing the full technological might of the People's Liberation Army? The human element adds another layer of complexity. USS Carney's crew performed magnificently under pressure, but they were defending against attacks that came sporadically over months. In a Taiwan scenario, the tempo would be overwhelming. Chinese doctrine calls for massive, simultaneous assaults designed to saturate defensive systems and paralyze decision-making. The 30-second engagement windows that Commander Robertson described would compress to single digits, with hundreds of simultaneous targets requiring split-second decisions. The Red Sea has also revealed troubling gaps in America's defense industrial base. The Navy has had to carefully manage its interceptor inventory because production lines can't keep pace with consumption in sustained combat. Raytheon, General Dynamics, and other contractors are ramping up production, but missile manufacturing requires sophisticated components and lengthy production cycles. China, meanwhile, has invested heavily in automated drone production facilities capable of churning out thousands of simple platforms monthly. What's most concerning is how the Red Sea demonstrates China's mastery of what military strategists call gray zone operations, activities that blur the line between peace and war. By supplying components and intelligence to the Houthis while maintaining plausible deniability, China forces the US to bear all the costs and risks of maintaining security while reaping the benefits of disrupted American operations. It's a strategy that Beijing could easily replicate across multiple theaters simultaneously. The implications extend beyond military planning to grand strategy. Every dollar the Navy spends on interceptor missiles in the Red Sea is a dollar not available for shipbuilding, research and development, or maintaining readiness in the Pacific. China's defense budget of $225 billion, with 25 to 30% allocated to the Navy, allows sustained investment in the technologies and platforms needed for future conflict. The People's Liberation Army Navy now operates 370 ships compared to the US Navy's 296, and the gap is widening. What the Red Sea has really demonstrated is that warfare itself is changing in fundamental ways. The age when expensive platforms dominated the seas may be ending, replaced by swarms of expendable systems that achieve effects through mass rather than sophistication. James Holmes of the Naval War College captures this shift perfectly. Karl von Clausewitz, probably the best strategic thinker of them all, implies that success in warfare is about a 60-40 proposition at best. We can lose, and in fact, I think the odds are in China's favor. The Red Sea battles will be remembered as a turning point, the moment when it became clear that the future of naval warfare belongs to whoever can most effectively deploy masses of inexpensive, intelligent weapons. China has been preparing for this future for years, building the industrial capacity, developing the doctrines, and testing the technologies needed to swarm American defenses. For the US Navy, the lesson is clear. The Red Sea is not just a regional crisis to be managed, but a preview of the Pacific War that may be coming. Every engagement provides data that both sides will use to refine their approaches. The question isn't whether drone swarms will reshape naval warfare. The Red Sea has already proven that they will. The question is whether America can adapt quickly enough to maintain its edge in the most consequential military competition of the 21st century. The destroyers fighting in the Red Sea today are writing the playbook for tomorrow's battles over Taiwan. Their success in defending against primitive attacks shouldn't breed complacency. It should illuminate just how much more challenging the next fight will be.